Bear down, fam. Josh Sweat is on the Bears' radar, and in a minute, I'll break down why his contract with Arizona could be the perfect window for Ryan Poles. Meanwhile, Xavier Thomas just slammed the door on a Keenan Allen reunion, and the reason is great news in disguise. But today's bombshell is Kieran Allen, one bad camp away from getting cut, and there's a name nobody saw coming ready to take his spot. Hollis Hall is moving fast. Bear down, fam, stick around. Okay, fam, I want us to get serious about this for a second because we have been talking about the Bears' pass rush since before Caleb Williams took his first snap as a pro, and we are still having the same conversation. That is the real problem here. This is not a one-season problem. It is a structural issue this organization has been dragging around for years, and even last year's Montez Sweat trade did not fully fix it. Let's get to the present. Right now, according to Dawindi City, the biggest remaining concern for this roster is bringing a consistent pass rush. There is a lot of trust placed in Montez Sweat, but the rest of the options are young, unproven, and out there more because of a lack of depth than because they earned it. And that is why the same speculation has been circling all offseason. Max Crosby, Josh Sweat, big names that, in theory, could fix this with one single trade. With Crosby, honestly, I have always felt that was more Twitter fantasy than real negotiation. The Raiders are not letting go of their best defensive player just like that. But with Josh Sweat, the conversation is different. And here's where I want to bring in something. I verified myself that I think completely changes how you have to read this story. Sweat signed a 4-year, $76.4 million deal with Arizona in March of 2025, with $41 million guaranteed. Under any normal reading, that says the Cardinals were not planning on moving him this soon. But then 2025 happened, and 2025 was a disaster for Arizona. Sweat finished with 12 sacks over 17 games, a solid season, honestly better than his average with Philadelphia. He was not the problem. The problem was the entire team collapsing around him. The Cardinals lost 10 of 11 games during one stretch of the season. That is not a slump. That is an organization falling apart with a $76 million veteran standing in the middle of the fire. And here's my point, the one Dawindi City does not fully develop, but that I think is the central piece of this whole story. When a team collapses like that after investing heavily in a specific player, that player becomes an asset. The front office starts evaluating with different eyes. I'm not saying Arizona has already decided to sell him. I am saying the combination of a bad team year plus a contract that is still relatively fresh creates exactly the kind of situation where a smart general manager starts listening to offers, even if publicly he says nothing is for sale. I could be wrong about this, but I have watched enough football to recognize the pattern. Now, the real question for the Bears is not whether Sweat would be available. The real question, the one that actually matters, is whether Chicago needs to spend that draft capital when it still does not know what it has at home. And that is literally the argument Dawindi City makes, and one I agree with completely. Training camp is going to be the real judge of this decision, more than any phone call between general managers. Austin Booker is the piece that decides all of this. If Booker shows on the practice field and in the preseason that he can be the real complement to Montez Sweat, then chasing Josh Sweat stops making sense in July. Why spend a second or third round pick, or whatever Arizona asks for, if you already have the internal solution? But if Booker looks limited, if he still looks like a rotational piece and not a starter, then this Josh Sweat conversation does not disappear. It just moves from July to the October trade deadline, when Arizona probably already knows for certain if it is out of contention, and Chicago probably already knows for certain if it needs that final push. With all the uncertainty that comes with it, here is my prediction. I do not think we see a Sweat trade before the season. I think Ryan Poles lets training camp speak first, exactly like he did with the offensive line last season, and this Sweat conversation comes back with real force in October if Arizona keeps losing, and Booker does not fully convince. This has burned me before, waiting on trades that never came, so I am not saying this with total certainty. But the pattern from this front office, waiting and trusting internal development before spending picks, has been consistent since Poles arrived. What I can tell you is this: if Booker does not take that jump in the coming weeks, and Arizona keeps free-falling like it did in 2025, this trade is going to feel practically inevitable by October. Keep this video in mind. And there is one more thing I want to bring in here, because almost nobody is discussing it. And as a fan of this defense, I think it is information that changes the entire evaluation. According to PFF grades, Sweat had a run defense grade of 69.8, which ranked him 30th among edge rushers in the league. That matters a lot if Dennis Allen is going to use him as a two-way piece, against the pass and against the run, instead of keeping him as a pure third and long specialist. Sweat is an excellent sack hunter. He generated 47 total pressures in 2025, but if you bring him to Chicago expecting him to also solve outside run gap defense, that is where he could disappoint. he is not a complete three-down player. He is a pass rush specialist at an elite level in that one specific thing. And that distinction, for me, changes how much draft capital you should be willing to pay for him. And watch how this connects directly to what we just talked about, because the pattern is the same. Ryan Poles trusting internal development before solving everything with a signing or a trade. Except this time we already have the answer, and the answer is that Keenan Allen no longer fits in Chicago. Let's go back to where this started, because just a few months ago this reunion with Allen looked almost obvious. Allen played with the Bears in 2024, Caleb Williams' rookie season, and finished with 70 catches, 744 yards, and 7 touchdowns over 15 games. Decent numbers, not spectacular, but enough to lead the team in touchdowns that year. He then signed with the Chargers for 2025 and bumped up to 777 yards with Justin Herbert. A consistent player, with some mileage on him, but still functional. When DJ Moore and Olamide Zaccheaus left Chicago this offseason, reuniting with Allen made all the sense in the world. He did not threaten Rome Odunze's role or Luther Burden's role, and he filled exactly the veteran, reliable receiver hole this roster needed on paper. But then two things happened during minicamp and the start of training camp that changed the whole calculation, and this is what genuinely has me excited as a fan. First, Khalif Raymond reunited with Ben Johnson and had an immediate impact in practice, showing the speed that made him useful in Detroit all these years. Second, and this is the one nobody saw coming, rookie Xavier Thomas has been, in Windy City's words, undeniably impressive throughout the offseason and into the start of camp. Listen carefully to what this means tactically. Thomas is not competing to be the 4th or 5th receiver on the depth chart. He is competing, according to the reports, for the 3rd starting spot behind Odunze and Burden. That is huge for a player who was not even part of the public conversation 2 months ago. And when a late-round rookie moves that fast into the starter conversation, it is usually because the coaching staff is seeing something in practice that has not shown up in public highlights yet. Consistent separation, reliable hands, quick understanding of Ben Johnson's scheme. My opinion on this, and I know some fans will not agree, is that this is one of the best signs of organizational health we have seen on this roster in years. Not because Allen was not good. It is because the depth this team is generating internally, on the offensive line, in the receiver room, in the tight end room with Loveland and Roosh, is starting to make the patch job signings this front office had to make in previous years unnecessary. When you can say you do not need a veteran in his 30s because your late-round rookie is playing better in practice, that is a development system working the way it is supposed to work. Not a coincidence. That said, and being honest with you, there is something being lost here that I do not want to ignore just because the narrative is positive. Allen is a receiver with more than a decade of experience, a guy who knows how to read coverages and adjust routes in real time in a way no rookie can replicate in his first year, no matter how talented he is. If Chicago gets into the regular season and Thomas is still not ready for that level of demand, especially in the playoffs against defenses that have studied him for 16 weeks, that is where the absence of a veteran like Allen is going to be felt. I'm not saying this to take away from the hype around Thomas. I'm saying it because playoff football is different from OTAs, and that jump is still unproven. But for now, and with what we know as of July, the conclusion is clear. Keenan Allen no longer has an obvious spot on this roster, and that, trust me, is good news dressed up as bad news. And that, fam, brings me to the third thread, the most uncomfortable one of the three, because it connects to something we have been talking about on this channel for months, the chronic instability at Chicago Bears left tackle. Let's go through the quick history here, because it matters for understanding why this is such a big deal. The Bears took Kieran Amagagia in the 3rd round of the 2024 draft, pick 75, a Yale tackle with interesting physical tools, but a quad injury that kept him out of most of his pre-draft preparation. He signed a 4-year deal worth $5.9 million, including a $1.1 million signing bonus. In his rookie season, he played just 6 games, with 1 start, and was flagged for 5 penalties and only 67 pass-blocking snaps. That is a penalty rate no offensive coordinator can accept from a tackle who is supposed to be protecting your franchise quarterback. Then, in 2025, an elbow injury sent him straight to injured reserve, and we basically saw nothing from him in his 2nd season. And here we are, in his 3rd year, with Ryan Poles rebuilding the entire offensive line around Caleb Williams after watching his franchise quarterback run for his life in previous seasons. Ozzie Trapilo will likely start the season on the PUP list recovering from a knee injury. The Bears brought back Braxton Jones and signed Jedrick Wills Jr., both with real starting experience. Theo Benedett returns as the swing tackle option. And according to ESPN's Courtney Cronin, Braxton Jones has the inside track to win the left tackle job in a competition that also includes Wills and Omega-G. Here is the exact line from that report that I think is the most brutal part of the whole thing. Quote, The Bears don't need to keep all three tackles when Benedette seems primed to be Chicago's swing tackle, so the final spot on the initial 53-man roster goes to Caden Barnett. End quote. That is the name that should worry any fan still holding out hope for Amagaji. Barnett is an undrafted free agent. The Bears gave $277,500 in guaranteed money on his rookie deal. For a UDFA, that is a massive signal that the front office is already projecting him above a third-round pick. My personal read on this, and I want to be direct. Ryan Poles has already made this decision mentally. Not officially, not announced, but when a general manager rebuilds an entire position with outside veterans, keeps drafting tight ends and cornerbacks instead of investing further in the offensive line, he is sending a clear signal that he no longer counts on the player who was supposed to fix this back in 2024. Amagaji has no remaining guaranteed money left, so cutting him costs nothing against the cap. And, on a roster building to genuinely contend, there is no sentimental room for picks that did not pan out. Now, to close this out with some real hope, because not everything in this roster bubble is a sad story, there are 2 late-round rookies opening a path in a way almost nobody's mentioning in the public conversation, and they genuinely have me excited. Malik Muhammad, a 4th-round pick, surprisingly fell further than expected because of questions about his size to play outside at cornerback. But with Kyler Gordon on the PUP list and Tyreek Stevenson entering a critical year without locking down anything on the outside, there is a real door open for Muhammad if he keeps impressing through camp in the preseason. And Keyshawn Elliott, a 5th-round pick, in a linebacker room that is full of names but short on certainties. TJ Edwards is recovering from a leg injury. DeMarco Jackson was re-signed and Devin Bush arrived in free agency, but both, honestly, have long careers with only one strong year each. If either of them comes back down to earth this year and Elliott has a strong summer, the path to the field opens up quickly for him. Look at the full pattern here, because it is the same across all 3 stories today. Ryan Poles building real competition at every position instead of guaranteeing jobs based on resume or draft number. That is exactly what a front office that actually wants to contend has to do, even when it hurts to watch a 3rd-round pick fall by the wayside. And there you have it, fam. 3 stories, 1 connecting thread. Training camp is going to settle everything the offseason left up in the air. The pass rush question comes down to what Austin Booker shows on the field versus what Arizona decides to do with a $76 million contract sitting on top of a team that is falling apart. The receiver room already has a winner, and that winner is internal depth over a familiar veteran name. And on the offensive line, a 3rd-round pick is about to lose his spot to an undrafted free agent, while 2 late-round rookies are starting to sound a lot louder than anyone expected back in May. This is what has me hooked on this roster in 2026. And it is not just about new talent. It is that Ryan Poles is forcing everybody veterans, draft picks, free agents to earn their spot on the field and not on paper. And for a franchise that spent an entire decade trusting names over actual production, that is a change worth celebrating. And honestly, fam, that is the part that has me most excited heading into August. We're not getting another filler training camp where we already know who wins every job before the preseason even starts. We are getting real competition with real consequences at the 3 positions that matter most to us as fans. Bear down, always. If this breakdown helped you out, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments. Should Chicago spend a 2nd-round pick on Josh Sweat at the trade deadline? Or do you trust what Austin Booker can give you instead? I want to read every single answer. See you in the next one.